I remember those days vividly. The days when the echoes of laughter haunted me, when I felt the sting of my circumstances the most. My name is Alex, and while my story may not be unique, it's my story just the same. I grew up in a household where money was always tight, where every penny counted. My parents worked from dawn to dusk, striving to make ends meet, all while I tried to navigate the turbulent waters of school life. Flashbacks of my childhood fill me with a mix of emotions, pain, anger, but also a strange sense of resilience. I can still remember the day I walked into school wearing my threadbare shoes, only to be met with the cruel laughter of my classmates. "Look at Alex. Did he forget to wear his real shoes today?" One of them sneered, his friends snickering behind him. It was as if they found joy in tearing me down, as if my poverty was their entertainment. "Why don't you just get a job, Alex?" "Oh wait, you're too poor for that too," another taunted. Deep down, I was just trying to survive, to support my family in whatever small way I could. I wanted to scream, to fight back against their mockery. But instead, I just smiled, hiding the turmoil inside. I learned early on that showing weakness would only give them more power. I remember the times when I was late to school because my family had to prioritize which bills to pay. Those moments felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Every morning was a reminder that my circumstances made me an easy target. They would call me names, make jokes about the second-hand clothes I wore, as if I had a choice in the matter. The laughter followed me like an unwanted shadow, wearing me down little by little. Despite it all, I found solace in my studies. I was determined to rise above my circumstances, to prove them wrong. I never let their words define me. I would work harder, study longer, and push myself to be better. Right then, I promised myself I would not stay the same. I yearned for a life where I would not struggle, where the whispers of mockery would fade into the background. Then came a turning point, like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. I was just a couple of years away from graduation when I received the news that changed everything. I'd been awarded a scholarship to a prestigious university. My heart raced as I read the letter. This was my chance, my moment to prove to everyone, including myself, that greatness was not defined by where you came from, but by where you dared to go. Yet, even illuminated by this spark of hope, the ridicule continued. "Scholarship boy, think you're better than us now," they snickered, their taunts still sharp. But their comments only fueled my determination. I had a mentor, Professor Williams, who saw potential in me that I hadn't even recognized in myself. He believed in hard work, resilience, and that everyone, no matter their background, could create a future they desired. "Alex, forget them," he said one day, looking me straight in the eyes. "Your strength isn't just in intelligence, but in your heart. Use it." Those words lodged deep within me. I started to channel my energy into my studies and extracurricular activities. I worked hard, trying to absorb every piece of knowledge available to me. I began to network, stepping outside my comfort zone, meeting people who could help shape my future. Through sleepless nights filled with textbooks and hard work, I began to accumulate skills and knowledge. It felt like I was finally gaining control of my destiny. I could feel the slow shift beneath my feet, and it invigorated me. I still remembered the faces of my old classmates, their carefree lives while I was shackled by my responsibilities. I wouldn't let their carefree lives become my cage. But life was not without its challenges. Balancing school, internships, and supporting my family often felt overwhelming. There were days I thought about giving up, especially when those old wounds would reopen during college reunions. The sight of them, smug and dismissive, would reignite that spark of pain. "You really think you can make anything of yourself?" someone would say, accompanied by laughter. That hurt, probably more than anything they had said before. But instead of letting it break me, I made a promise to myself to use all that ridicule as fuel. "They'll see," I muttered to myself. I channeled that hurt into motivation. Silence would be my reply. One day I would show them. And then I did just that. My hard work paid off when I finally graduated and landed a high-profile job, the kind they would have thought impossible for someone like me. I can still feel the pride swelling in my chest. I had done it. I was no longer that mocked boy wearing torn shoes. I had transformed into someone they would never recognize. Yet, as the curtain rose on my success, a new chapter of my life began, one filled with obstacles I hadn't anticipated. But that's a story for another time. For now, let's just savor the moment I had taken my first steps towards triumph, a story forever tangled with the laughter of those who once made me their target. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would turn their world upside down. As I stepped into my new life post-graduation, excitement coursed through me. An exhilarating sense of doom hung in the air, a promise of what was to come. Months of hard work had led to this moment, and while I still felt like an imposter at times, the world was beginning to see me differently. I had landed a high-profile job at a leading tech company that was constantly making headlines. I could hardly believe the transformation that had taken place. My financial situation had done a complete 180. I could afford things I had only dreamt of as a child. I was no longer bound by the chains of poverty, and how sweet it was to finally have control over my life. Yet, as I navigated through my success, I couldn't shake the feeling of my past. I remembered the faces of those who had belittled me for so long. I wondered if they still laughed or if they had finally felt the weight of remorse. They say that time changes everything, and I found that to be true when I bumped into a few of my former classmates at a networking event one evening. There they were, their forced smiles betraying their struggles as they gathered in a corner, speaking in hushed tones. I feigned ignorance for a moment, almost tempted to stride toward them and tower above with my newfound confidence. But then I recalled their jeers from our school days, mocking my very existence. Instead, I made my presence known just enough for them to notice me, but not so much that I seemed arrogant. "Alex," one of them said, recognition lighting up her eyes. "Is that really you? We barely recognized you." Her smile was genuine, but it didn't conceal the hint of anxiety. They were caught in a web of their own making, wearing their wealth like armor while feeling empty inside. I took a deep breath, willing myself to appear nonchalant. "Yes, it's me, just trying to survive like everyone else," I replied, my voice steady. It was an invitation for dialogue, and I could sense their curiosity. I remembered them strolling around school, believing they had life figured out. And now, it felt like the roles had reversed. They were trapped in jobs that led nowhere, their dreams diminishing as rapidly as my self-esteem had during those dreary school days. In the days that followed, I realized I was growing into my role and my success. Each meeting, each project, everything propelled me closer to where I had always longed to be. Yet in the back of my mind, my old classmates loomed. I couldn't deny their presence or the choice that faced me, to either flaunt my new life or to teach them a lesson as they had taught me. It wasn't long before an unexpected revelation came my way. During another networking gathering, I overheard whispers of layoffs among the very same classmates I had once shared moments of laughter and embarrassment with. They struggled to make ends meet, their privileges slipping away as swiftly as they had come. My heart raced a little at the realization. They were facing the consequences of their inability to empathize. While I had fought against prejudice, they were now buried under it. In the midst of this turmoil, several of them reached out for job opportunities, unaware of my identity. They thought of me as just another name on the applicant list, the ambitious entrepreneur who might have the chance to help them. I wrestled with the decision. Should I reject them on the basis of their past mockery? Or should I extend an olive branch with the hope of teaching them humility? The air felt heavy as I weighed my options, but I ultimately decided against immediate revenge. I chose instead to build a lesson. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I would employ them, allowing them a chance to redeem the folly they had once reached out to so cruelly. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense, but perhaps it was a way to set the stage for reflection. That moment arrived when the day finally came for them to learn who I had become. I invited each of them to a meeting. As they sat around the table, their faces reflected curiosity mixed with apprehension. They were clueless, blissfully unaware of the significance of the moment. I plastered a pleased yet professional smile on my face, eager to begin our conversations. "Thank you all for coming today," I said, attempting to keep my composure steady. "I saved this time to discuss the roles we have open, opportunities to get back on your feet." Their excitement was palpable. I reveled in the power of the moment, the air thick with unspoken anticipation. And then, just as I was about to present, I decided to unmask myself. "But before we start," I continued, "there's something you all should know. I'm not just your potential employer. I'm Alex, the same Alex you used to mock for my situation." The room was thick with silence, every pair of eyes darting toward one another as realization dawned. "You laughed at me. You thought I was nothing. And yet here I stand." I paused, letting my words sink in. "But I didn't come here just to flaunt that. I want to teach you something. The vital importance of empathy, the power of kindness, and why it's crucial never to underestimate someone based on their circumstances." The reactions were mixed. A few looked ashamed, their faces painting a portrait of regret. Others squirmed in their seats, unable to face the discomfort of their past. It was the perfect moment of reckoning, and I owed it to myself and to them. My heart swelled, not with vengeance but with a resolve to guide them towards humility. "Life can change in a heartbeat," I added softly, catching their eyes one by one. I know it did for me. Take this opportunity, not as a handout but as a chance to grow. Let my story redefine yours. There was a palpable shift in the room, an air of responsibility mingled with relief. The laughter that once haunted my days had transformed into a very different sound, one of reflection, introspection. As I walked out, I felt liberated. This was my triumph, not through revenge, but rather through the gift of vulnerability. I realized then that life wasn't just about striking back. It was about building something new, crafting connections, and fostering growth. My former classmates would remember my words long after this day. And so, the path for both them and me was paved, revealing smooth stones of understanding. I had turned my past pain into their opportunity for reevaluation. Life had flipped the script, and no one but me understood the beauty in that. Within the echoes of the laughter that once wounded me lay the seeds of compassion that could turn their shame into strength, a lesson worth savoring. As the weeks went by, I settled into my role as a new entrepreneur. The thrill of success surged through me, yet so did the weight of my past. When a few of my former classmates approached me seeking job opportunities, I felt an unexpected pang of uncertainty. They walked into my office, confident in their usual way, yet there was an edge to their demeanor. They didn't recognize me behind my polished exterior. It was a strange juxtaposition of emotions. "Alex, we're really looking forward to becoming part of your team," one of them said, their excitement almost palpable. I could see the desperation mingled with hope in their eyes. It was a far cry from the mockery they had spewed in the halls of our school. The opportunity for revenge was ripe, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. I could easily dismiss them, force them to confront their past actions. But I paused. I found myself grappling with my conscience. What point would it serve to bring them down further? Instead of exacting revenge, I wondered if this was my chance to teach them a lesson in humility. Empathy had been the cornerstone of my journey. Maybe it was time to let them experience a glimpse of that. "Let's talk," I said calmly, gesturing for them to sit down. I elected to keep my response professional, aware of the delicate balance I held. They were vulnerable, and I could feel the anticipation of what was about to unfold within the walls of that meeting room. The first few meetings involved sharing insights about the industry. I watched as they were attentive, eager to learn. It was evident that they were devoid of the arrogance they once flaunted. Instead, they were stripped bare of past superiority, craving redemption as if it were oxygen. I sensed their embarrassment creeping out, despite their attempts to disguise it within laughter and small talk. Weeks turned into months as I guided them through their roles. There were moments of camaraderie, laughter mingled with shared experiences. Yet the reminder of our past still lingered in the air, like an uninvited guest. One day, everything changed when the topic of our college days came into focus during a casual conversation. "Do you remember the bullies?" one of my old classmates asked, before adding thoughtlessly, "I guess even they eventually fall, huh?" Those words struck a chord that reverberated through my chest. My mouth went dry, but I smiled, hiding the storm behind my facade. Yes, it seems life has its ways of balancing the scales. The room grew tense. I knew it was time for truths to emerge, to prod the wounds that had only begun to heal. The next meeting was planned for a Thursday, and I thought long and hard about how to approach the moment. I felt a rush of adrenaline, but this time it was not about vengeance. It was about clarity. They needed to understand the lessons I had learned. As I invited them in, the atmosphere was heavy but charged with the essence of change. Today, I want to share something personal, an experience that changed how I see the world. I took a deep breath and began to recount my journey, from the taunts that had once plagued me to the moment I received my scholarship. I learned that those who mock often overlook the struggles of others. It's easy to laugh when you've never been hungry or ostracized. I spoke softly but firmly, noticing their eyes wide in realization. But more troubling is how that laughter can poison your own heart. The room fell silent, and I could see their expressions change. Regret washed over them like a wave. I could have relished in their discomfort, but instead, I felt an unexpected sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim, and this was my moment of truth, standing tall among those who once reduced me to nothing. I am Alex, the boy you laughed at, I continued, and I have something important to remind you about. The silence thickened, and I could feel the tension gripping every one of us. We are all capable of change. We matter, no matter what we once believed. But change demands reflection and humility. As I shared my story, I watched their faces, some turning pale while others bore expressions of sincere remorse. Some seemed hollow, unsure of how to respond, like they were seeing themselves for the first time through a different lens. Yet, as I opened up, the tears began to flow silently. The conversations following my revelation turned into a powerful therapy session. They admitted their faults, and I encouraged them to rise beyond the shame. I wasn't giving them a free pass, but I recognized their willingness to change. Life was too precious to tear down someone else to feel good about oneself. Ultimately, my decision to lead by example rather than take revenge started to ripple into a change that I hadn't anticipated. Days turned into weeks, and the old bonds began to heal slowly, carving a path to mutual respect. They expressed their regrets for their past behavior, wanting to discuss ways to mend fences, even reaching out to those they had once bullied. By the end of a meaningful quarter, most of them had gained new insights and skills. It was profound to witness their transformations, validating my choice to approach the situation with compassion. As they grew, so did their desire for self-betterment. My final days with my former classmates were bittersweet, filled with laughter and camaraderie, but underscored with the knowledge that life does turn around. They embraced my mentorship, and the once toxic laughter began to morph into a louder sound, a sound of hope and growth. As I wrapped things up, I looked back at the faces surrounding me. They had shown a willingness to genuinely change, and I knew, deep down, that I had made the right choice. The tastes of revenge failed in comparison to the flavor of redemption. I left them that day, heart brimming with gratitude. I had not only turned my pain into progress, but had also ignited the embers of change in those who had once mocked me. And in my own way, I had given back the greatest gift anyone can offer: understanding and forgiveness. Perhaps the strangest twist of fate lies not in vengeance, but in nurturing, a whisper of hope echoing in a world that can often be cruel. I didn't need the validation of watchful eyes anymore. I had found my strength in lifting others, showing them that true power is not the ability to knock someone down, but rather to help them rise again. In the end, forgiveness became my ultimate victory, molding a narrative that wasn't just about revenge, but rather about the joy of transformation for myself and for them. Those who once laughed now had the chance to learn, to reflect, and perhaps one day to laugh again, this time together, as a community built from understanding instead of judgment.